Today, we're diving into some of the top remaining free agents that could be great fits for the Denver Broncos. But before we get into that, we've had some fun during the offseason playing Name a Random at the end of our videos. We'll play that again later, so I'll give you a moment to think about it. Here's the prompt. Name a random school in March Madness this year. Now let's talk Broncos. Denver has already made significant moves this offseason, filling a lot of their roster gaps. However, teams still like to add a few veteran players here and there after the initial waves of free agency. Quick note about my voice. Apologies if it sounds a bit off. I just got back from a red-eye flight from Las Vegas to Dallas after attending a bachelor party. I'm running on a few hours of sleep, but I wanted to make sure I got a video out for you all today. Thanks for bearing with me. Now let's get to the list. Coming in at number 5 for the Broncos, I have wide receiver Amari Cooper. I've always been pretty clear on this channel that I don't think wide receiver is as big of a need as some people believe. But that said, a veteran like Cooper could still offer significant upside for a young quarterback like Bo Nix. Cooper had an outstanding 2022 and 2023 season, but his performance dipped dramatically this past year. I'm not entirely sure why. Age could be a factor, but just a year ago, he was playing some of the best football of his career. Fast forward to the season, and he was involved in some trade rumors between the Browns and 49ers, with Brandon Ayuk possibly being part of the conversation. Maybe that left him frustrated. He eventually gets traded to Buffalo, but even with Josh Allen as his quarterback, he just didn't quite find his rhythm. Now, I'm not suggesting Cooper should replace Marvin Mims or Devonta Melly at the top of the Broncos' depth chart, but bringing in a veteran like Cooper could be a smart move. He could serve as a reliable backup who can step in if there's an injury. If that happens, Bo Nix would know that his next option is a receiver who's been around for years, understands how to read defenses, and knows exactly what his quarterback needs. He's the kind of guy who will get open on 3rd and 10 and move the chains. You probably won't see Cooper flying down the sideline for a 60-yard touchdown these days, but if he can fill in when needed and provide some reliable depth, I don't see any downside to it. Plus, I don't think it'll cost the Broncos much. A cheap one-year deal for Cooper could be a solid option. Again, I don't think the Broncos desperately need another wide receiver, but if they do decide to add one, Amari Cooper could be a great veteran target for Bo Nix to have in his corner. Think of him as a break glass in case of emergency kind of player. Before we move on to the other players on my list, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We've got plenty of free agency news, draft content coming soon, and we're less than a month away from the draft. You won't want to miss a single thing, so subscribe now. At number 4, we're going with another Buffalo Bill, Von Miller. His name has been mentioned a few times this offseason, and each time the conversation has been about the possibility of him finishing his career in Denver. There's been a lot of talk around the idea of, wouldn't it be nice if Von came back to the Broncos? But here's where I get off the train. I don't think this team should be in the business of making charity signings. When we look at what Von Miller has done over the last couple of years in Buffalo, it's clear he's not as productive as he once was. If we're being honest, he might not even crack the top 3 edge rushers on this Broncos roster, maybe not even the top 4. Bringing Von back would be more about giving him a feel-good ending to his career than making an impact on the field, and that's where the problem lies. Look, I get it. Von Miller is a future Hall of Famer and one of the best players to ever wear a Broncos uniform. His impact on this franchise is undeniable, and I completely understand why fans would want to see him return. But from a football standpoint, I wouldn't push for him to come back and take a significant role on the defense. Over the last 2 years in Buffalo, he hasn't been the same player. He's been averaging about 6 sacks per season, playing maybe a third of the snaps on a good day. That's not what Denver needs. Instead, I'd rather see young players like Jonah Ellis and DeAndre Tillman continue to develop. Adding Von Miller to the roster might limit their potential by taking snaps away from them, slowing down their growth in their second and third seasons. I'd be much happier sticking with the same 4 pass rushers we had last year, Nick Bonito and Jonathan Cooper. Neither of them is going to lose their starting job to a guy who's posted just 6 sacks over the last 2 seasons. And with the rise of Ellis and Tillman as solid backups, I think the Broncos have enough depth without needing to bring back Miller. Now, don't get me wrong, if Von Miller does return, I won't be upset. It's Von Miller after all, but I'm not out here campaigning for his return. I just don't see the role he would fill on this team, especially when the Broncos' pass rush is already stronger than what Buffalo had last season. The magic of 2015 is long gone, and in my opinion, it's time to close that chapter. Now let's move on to the next free agent to keep an eye on. At number 3, I'm going with another defensive player, cornerback Mike Hilton. We can all agree that the Broncos' depth at cornerback has been a major concern in recent seasons. When the starters have gone down or had to be benched, the backup play has been less than stellar. The best backup cornerback Denver has had since 2021 was Fabian Moreau, who stepped in when Devontae Bowsby was benched in 2023. To be honest, Kyle Fuller didn't work out as a backup, and the team hasn't had consistent depth behind their starters. Hilton could provide the kind of stability that's been missing. I'm not overly confident in the depth behind the top 3 cornerbacks, which is why I'd be on board with adding someone like Mike Hilton. He's been in the league for 8 seasons and has primarily played as a slot corner, but he has the physicality and versatility to play across the defense. If something were to happen to one of your top 3 corners, I'd feel comfortable with Hilton stepping in as the nickel corner, potentially replacing Jaquan McMillian, or even sliding outside if needed. Now let's talk about Riley Moss for a second. He's dealt with injuries in each of his first 2 seasons in the NFL. He missed all of training camp in his rookie year and spent about a month on the bench last year due to a soft tissue injury. So no, we shouldn't assume Moss is some kind of Iron Man who can play every game without issue. Injuries are a concern with him, and that's why having a solid, experienced backup like Hilton would be a smart move. Having a quality veteran backup at a key position is something I'm always in favor of, especially when the current depth doesn't give me a ton of confidence. If one of the top 2 or 3 cornerbacks gets hurt, Hilton would be a reliable guy to have on the bench, someone who's been around the league for nearly a decade, started in big games, and has the experience to step up when needed. Now, to circle back to Von Miller, let me know what you think. Should Denver bring him back? Drop a 58 in the comments if you think it's a good idea. It'd be a fun story, a great 24 hours on social media for Broncos country, and a cool week at training camp. But honestly, after that, I think it might get a little underwhelming and disappointing. So while I'm not totally opposed to the idea, I'm not finding a clear spot for him on this roster. Let me know your thoughts. Before we get to the final 2 free agents, make sure to check out this awesome Broncos hat. Head over to chatsports.com/DeanHat, link in the comments and description. They've got a great selection of gear on sale, so visit the site to support the channel. All right, let's move on to number 2 on the list. Former Texans wide receiver Stefon Diggs. Much like Cooper, there's been a lot of buzz around the idea of the Broncos signing a big-name receiver. Fans wanted Cooper Kupp, but that didn't happen. There were trade rumors about Deebo Samuel, but nothing came of that. Now, Stefon Diggs is the next name that keeps coming up, and for good reason. His production in Buffalo has been nothing short of phenomenal. He posted back-to-back-to-back seasons with 10-plus touchdowns and over 1,100 yards. But take a closer look at the numbers from 2021 and 2023. His touchdowns dropped from 10 to 8, and his yards started to slip year after year as he got older. He'll be turning 31 at the start of the upcoming season, and he's coming off a torn ACL. Now, I'm not completely sold on Diggs being the same player we saw in Buffalo. If we get a fully healthy 2024 Diggs, his pro-rated stats would likely be around 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns. For the right price, he could still be a solid option, but I'm not sure he'd be the superstar receiver he once was. I'd love that kind of production from Diggs on this team, but I'm not interested in giving him 3 years and $45 million like Cooper Kupp got for just 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns. The expectations have to be a bit higher for a salary like that. If you could bring Diggs to Denver on a more affordable deal, though, I'd be open to it. You also have to consider the locker room dynamics. There's been chatter that Diggs might not be the best asset to a locker room. Some have described him as a bit selfish, and honestly, this isn't unusual for wide receivers. They get paid to catch passes, score touchdowns, and rack up yards. Wide receivers aren't typically rewarded for making great blocks on running plays or watching their teammates score. If the ball's not thrown their way, they're not happy, even if the team wins. We've seen plenty of diva receivers upset when they don't get the stats they want, regardless of the team's success. This kind of mentality doesn't strike me as a Sean Payton player. Payton is all about winning, and he's not afraid to show it. Remember how irate he was after that preseason loss to the Cardinals in year 1. It was just a preseason game, but Payton played his starters deep into the third quarter, and when they lost, he was furious. Does Diggs seem like a player who'd fit into that kind of high energy, no nonsense mentality? I'm not sure he does, but if you can make it work, and if Diggs can accept a role that's more in line with his age and health at 31, coming off a torn ACL, I could see him as a decent option. If he's willing to accept a reduced role in the offense, similar to what Courtland Sutton provided last year, 1,000 yards and 5 to 7 touchdowns at a reasonable price, I think it could work. If Diggs is willing to accept that kind of deal around $10 million, I'm on board. Moving on to number 1 on my list, J.K. Dobbins. Now, Dobbins is a tough one to place at number 1 because I'm not banging the table for him to come to Denver. But when I rank Dobbins among these other free agents, he makes the most sense. I don't think the Broncos need to make a big splash at wide receiver. A Von Miller return would be a feel-good story, but not a necessity. Mike Hilton would be a great depth piece, but ultimately a backup. Dobbins, on the other hand, could actually be a starter for this team. The injuries have been unfortunate for Dobbins, especially in Baltimore, but last year he showed flashes of his old self. If not for a 4-game stint on IR, he would have finished the season with around 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns. The Chargers just signed Najee Harris, which hurt Dobbins' market, but if he were a free agent last year, he would have been snatched up quickly. He likely would have received a contract worth $7 to $8 million, like DeAndre Swift and Tony Pollard did. Unfortunately, it's just a tough time to be a free agent running back. The reason Dobbins is still unsigned likely comes down to the draft being loaded with running back talent this year. Any team looking to sign a running back would be better off waiting until April to grab a younger, cheaper option from the draft. That's why I think Dobbins is still on the market. The injuries are certainly a factor, but the draft class is likely playing a big role in teams' hesitation. If Dobbins' price drops significantly, though, I don't see any harm in bringing him in. Look at the current running back room. How many of these guys are truly locks to make the 53-man roster? You've got Javonte Williams, sure, but how much confidence does the team have in the rest of the group? There's a lot of uncertainty. Guys like Audric Esteem and Jaleel McLaughlin are promising, but they didn't quite live up to expectations last year, and the team had to keep leaning on Williams more than they probably wanted to. So you could see a new-look running back room where it's a rookie, Dobbins, and Esteem. Maybe you go with 4 backs and sneak McLaughlin onto the roster as well. I don't think it's out of the question to double dip in free agency and the draft at running back, and Dobbins is arguably the best option out there right now. This team definitely needs help at running back, and Dobbins could be the solution. All right, we started the video with the name a random school in March Madness question, and I've got my answer. Let's see if you and I think the same thing. On 3. 1, 2, 3. Iowa State Cyclones, baby. That's it for today's episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit that subscribe button and like the video down below. I'll catch up with everyone tomorrow.